740. New book is out in stores this week. It tells the tale of the LDS faith and its ties to maybe a libertarian political point of view, but that's really a broad brush. To get into the specifics, we have the author of Latter-day Liberty, Boyack, with us. And first, here, this is your book right here. Apparently doing quite well.
Yeah, we've it's been shipping for a couple weeks. Already sold out of the first print run, so we're into the second print run already.
Now, it's dealing with a lot of topics, and we can jump into some of these things that are in a more general sense, and I will do that. But first off, this line in the book says, "Persuasion, not force, should be our ideal." Explain that.
That comes from the foreword by Mark Skousen. It's kind of an overarching theme in the book that so often through government, we're trying to implement policies and do things that are coercing people, punishing behavior, mandating that they do something. I contend that individual liberty and the theology of the LDS faith requires that we only operate through persuasion, that we can't, unless someone has done something harmful to me, compel them to do something.
Now, one of the famous tenets, for lack of a better term, or quotes that you use in the LDS faith is that if you teach people correct principles, they can, and I'll use the word basically, which I don't think is part of that quote, they can govern themselves. Is that the type of political party or political person that the LDS faith should be, based on its tenets, looking for?
Yeah, and the quote does say governance from Joseph Smith, and that's exactly right. It's not so much about party, it's about principle, and so the book really discusses principles. That's very true, that the LDS faith talks a lot about agency and accountability, and so the application of those theological principles to public policy is kind of where the intersection of the book operates to say, well, how does that apply? Let's use persuasion, let's respect people's agency and liberty. How does that really look when we talk about things like immigration and war and education and such?
And as far as LDS, people who are in the LDS faith who run for politics, I'm not familiar with libertarian or other parties, but we do have people on both sides of the aisle, Democrat, Republican. Should LDS people be with a different party, or should they be all over the place when it comes to based on their beliefs? Or because majority, at least in this state, seem to be with the Republican
Right,
party.
and in the introduction of the book, I talk about how that's a flip-flop. That it used to be that Mormons were by and large Democrats, and the question was, can you be a Republican and a good Mormon? And now that's reversed. So I don't talk so much about parties as I do principles. We talk about parties, but we say you can find a libertarian type of person, or rather an advocate of liberty, in any party or no party. And so we shouldn't be so much concerned with the organization that we affiliate with as we should the principles that we're espousing and advocating.
Well, Connor, thank you. Again, the book is Latter-day Liberty. You can find it on sale right now, doing quite well. And we will talk to Connor a little bit later, because we only hit like the first 2 pages, and we'll get into the rest of it coming up a little bit later. Great. So thank you very much. All right, we need to take a break. Still ahead, we have much. Now 8:20. A new book is out in bookstores right now. It tells the tale of the LDS faith and ties to maybe a libertarian political point of view, or maybe it's just about liberty. The author of the book right here, Latter-day Liberty, Connor Boyack. And thank you, Connor, for being with us. And this book is doing pretty well, isn't it?
Yeah, in fact, they just, publisher told me yesterday, we just sold out of the first print run. It's still in stores, but the publisher has sold out. They're doing another print run to keep up with the demand.
That's got to be exciting.
It is.
I mean,
it's
I've never
very
read the book,
surprising. Yeah, it's great.
And, right on the front, you've got a quote from, and a supportive quote from Ron Paul. I've seen other people that are supporting it, the president of Overstock.com. So a lot of big people are getting behind this. I wanted to talk about some of the things, and maybe I'll keep it general instead of getting specific right now. Is this the book that an LDS person should be reading to know what they should support and why? Or is it that type of book? Or
yeah, that's a good question. The LDS Church itself goes to great lengths to say they're politically neutral. They're not saying you should vote for this candidate or this issue so much, with certain exceptions. But our scriptures and our church history and the leaders of our church have spoken so often on principles and on topics that do apply and should apply. And so my book is kind of a comprehensive analysis to say, what do we find in our scriptures and our history, and what have our church leaders said? Let's compile it and distill it all on a topical basis and see how we might vote on these specific issues.
And obviously, I think you being LDS would not say one book has got all the answers, but you do make a comment here about persuasion and not force should be our ideal. That if people are, as the quote goes, aware of the correct principles, they'll go in the right direction, they'll vote for the right things, they'll get behind the right things. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, and of course, like you hinted at, education is the key, and that's kind of why I decided to write the book. We need to understand the principles and then their application. Once we have the educational component, we can then use the application and say, well, I'm going to vote this way, or I'm going to support this candidate because they do or do not support the underlying principles. And so
now this is also a history lesson as well. In one part it talks about, I think it was in 1856, a party getting together and saying we want to get rid of polygamy and slavery, and at that time Mormons as a whole were pretty much Democrats.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, it's a very interesting history as I was researching it, that right now the familiar line of thinking is that, well, you can't be a Democrat and a good member of the church. And prominent Democrat Mormons have gone to great lengths to say, well, no, that's not true. I'm a Democrat. I'm a temple-going, faith-believing Mormon. But back in the day, it was completely in the reverse. Mormons, by and large, were Democrats, and the line of thinking back then was you can't be a Republican and a good Democrat. So parties have shifted. They've taken different issues. They've even gone through different names, different iterations. My book is an attempt to say, let's get rid of the parties for a moment. Let's talk about the underlying principles, and that may apply to the Republican or the Democrat Party, or it may not.
You do say here the Constitution is a libertarian document. Is this an endorsement for the Libertarian Party, or are you just trying to be...
No, yeah, absolutely not. In fact, I have a whole chapter up front where I give context to what I mean by libertarian. So we're not talking about the Libertarian Party. Most people even have a preconception, a bias of what, Ayn Rand loving pot-smoking atheist, is a libertarian. I take a different approach and I say a libertarian is just someone who supports liberty. So we need to understand what liberty is. And so the first half of the book is, what is liberty? And once we understand that, then, well, a libertarian is just someone who believes that, whether you're a member of whatever party.
And just out of curiosity, you have Mitt Romney, Harry Reid, two different sides. Are our Mormon politicians voting as they should based on your research?
I would contend they're not. Hopefully they'll read the book. Maybe they will. But I think that we need to approach public policy from the LDS faith, those of us who are members of the Mormon Church, with the application of the principles that we believe in. I don't know that that's so much the mentality that they espouse.
We need to wrap it up right there because we want to mention on Saturday, Costco, downtown Salt Lake, 12 to 4, there'll be a book signing. Thank you for coming in very much, Connor.
Thank you.